The old car rattled down the long, winding driveway. Its engine coughed and sputtered, like an old man out of breath. My brother Sam gripped the steering wheel tightly. He stared ahead at the large house that stood on the hill. "Are you sure this is it, Clara?" he asked. His voice was quiet. The trees on both sides of the driveway were tall and dark. Their branches looked like long, bony fingers reaching for our car. A cool wind whispered through the leaves, making a sound like a soft sigh. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. But here, under the trees, it was already getting dark. I leaned forward, my face close to the dusty windshield. "This has to be it," I said, my voice full of excitement. "Captain Grant's Inn. It looks just like the pictures." The inn was huge. It was a 3-story colonial house with dark shutters on every window. The paint was peeling in some places, and ivy crawled up one side of the building like a green monster. It looked ancient and mysterious, exactly what I had hoped for. I loved old places with stories, especially ghost stories, and Captain Grant's Inn was supposed to be one of the most haunted places in Connecticut. I could already feel a shiver of happy fear run down my spine. Sam parked the car in a gravel lot next to the inn. He turned off the engine, and the sudden silence felt heavy. He was the older one, the practical one. He didn't believe in ghosts or things that went bump in the night. He had only agreed to come because it was my birthday weekend. "It looks like it could fall down any second," he muttered, looking at the sagging porch and the tilted chimney. He was always worried about things like safety and logic. I, on the other hand, saw only history and adventure. I imagined all the people who had walked through its doors over the last 200 years. We got out of the car, and the air smelled of damp earth and old wood. A single yellow light glowed from a window on the first floor. It looked like a lonely eye watching us. I grabbed my bag from the back seat, my heart beating fast. "Come on, Slowpoke," I said to Sam. "The adventure is about to begin." He sighed and pulled his own bag out. He looked up at the dark windows on the top floor and shivered, even though the evening was not that cold. He tried to hide it, but I could tell the old inn was already making him feel uneasy. He preferred new hotels with bright lights and clean hallways. We walked up the creaking wooden steps to the front porch. The door was made of heavy dark wood with a large iron handle. I reached out and pushed it open. A small bell chimed somewhere deep inside the house. The sound was soft and a little sad. The moment we stepped inside, the air changed. It was thick with the smell of wood smoke, old paper, and something sweet like dried flowers. The light inside was dim, coming from a few small lamps with dusty fringed shades. A long hallway stretched out before us, its wooden floors dark and polished from years of use. A grand staircase with a carved wooden banister stood to our right. It curved upwards into the shadows of the second floor. Portraits of serious-looking people in old-fashioned clothes hung on the walls. Their eyes seemed to follow us as we stood in the entryway. Sam stayed close to me, his hands in his pockets. "This place gives me the creeps," he whispered. "It smells like my grandmother's attic." He was right, but I loved that smell. It was the smell of time itself, of memories packed away and forgotten. I could hear the faint ticking of a grandfather clock from a room down the hall. "Can I help you?" a voice asked. It was a soft, crackly voice, like dry leaves skittering across a sidewalk. An old woman appeared from behind a tall wooden desk. She was small and thin, with her white hair pulled back in a tight bun. She wore a dark dress and a small gold pin shaped like a ship. Her eyes were pale blue, and they looked at us with a curious expression. She smiled, but her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. She seemed as old as the house itself, a part of its history. She slid a large, leather-bound guest book across the counter. "You must be Clara and Samuel," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "We've been expecting you." I signed our names with a shaky hand, my excitement growing with every passing second. Sam just nodded, not saying a word. The woman took an old, heavy brass key from a hook on the wall behind her. It had a large number 13 attached to it. "You'll be in room 13 at the top of the stairs," she said, handing me the key. "It's one of our quietest rooms." Her words were meant to be comforting, but they sent another shiver through me. We thanked the woman and started up the grand staircase. Each step groaned under our weight, the sound echoing in the quiet hall. Sam walked behind me, holding the railing as if he were afraid of falling. The air grew colder as we climbed higher. The portraits on the wall seemed to watch our every move. I could feel their painted eyes on my back. When we reached the second-floor landing, it was even darker. A long, narrow hallway led to more doors, all of them closed. We continued up a smaller, steeper set of stairs to the third floor, where our room was located. The third floor hallway was short and ended at a single door with the number 13 on it. There were no other rooms up here. It felt isolated, far away from everything. I put the heavy brass key into the lock. It was stiff, and I had to jiggle it before it finally turned with a loud click. The sound was sharp in the deep silence of the house. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was larger than I expected, but it was filled with shadows. The only light came from a single small lamp on a bedside table, casting a soft golden glow over everything. The room was filled with antique furniture. A massive 4-poster bed with a dark wood frame stood against the far wall. It was covered with a thick handmade quilt. Next to it was a small round table and a velvet armchair. A large ornate wardrobe stood in one corner, and a dressing table with a cloudy oval mirror sat against the other wall. The window was tall and narrow, with lace curtains that looked as delicate as spider webs. The room was clean, but it felt like no one had stayed here for a very long time. It was like a room in a museum, perfectly preserved. I dropped my bag on the floor and spun around with a happy sigh. "Isn't it perfect, Sam?" I asked. "It's like we've traveled back in time." Sam didn't answer right away. He was standing in the doorway, staring at the room with a frown on his face. He slowly walked in and put his bag down by the wardrobe. "It's old," he finally said, "and cold." He rubbed his arms and looked at the dark corners of the room. I could see he was uncomfortable. He was trying to be brave for me, but the inn's heavy atmosphere was getting to him. I walked over to the window and pulled back the lace curtain. I looked down at the dark garden below. The moon was rising, casting long, spooky shadows from the trees. I could see our old car in the gravel lot, looking small and out of place. Everything was so quiet. There were no sounds from the road, no noises from other guests. It felt like we were the only two people in the entire world, locked away in this forgotten house. I turned back to look at Sam. He was still standing in the middle of the room, looking around as if he expected something to jump out at him. "You're not scared, are you?" I teased gently. I knew he was, but I wanted him to relax and enjoy the experience. He was my big brother, and he was supposed to be the brave one. He finally looked at me and tried to smile. "Of course not," he said, but his voice was not convincing. "It's just an old house. Old houses make noises. It's the wood settling, or the wind." He was trying to find logical explanations for the strange feeling in the air. He was trying to convince himself more than he was trying to convince me. I sat down on the edge of the big bed. The mattress was soft, and it sank under my weight. "They say a woman named Adelaide haunts this inn," I said in a low, spooky voice. "She waits for her husband, a sea captain, to return. Some people say they can hear her crying at night." Sam shook his head and sat in the velvet armchair. "Those are just stories, Clara. People make them up to attract tourists." He leaned his head back and closed his eyes, but I could see he wasn't relaxed. His hands were gripping the arms of the chair tightly. Just then, we both heard it. A soft sound coming from inside the walls. It was a faint scratching noise like a mouse. But then it was followed by a low whisper, too quiet to understand the words. Sam's eyes flew open. He sat up straight and looked at me, his face pale in the dim light. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. I nodded slowly, my own heart starting to beat faster. The logical explanations were fading away. The old house was not just settling, it was waking up. We sat there in the silence, waiting, knowing that our long haunted weekend at Captain Grant's Inn had truly begun.